Ms. Ustyugova, thank you very much for this interview. So first question is, you know, Armenian GDP back in 2008 was $11.9 billion and state debt was approximately $2 billion. So after several years, you know, economic growth, our GDP, for example, in last year was approximately $10.5 billion and our public debt approximately 3 times bigger and was approximately $6 billion. So the question is about efficiency of money used by our government. What can you say on this?
Thank you. So the IMF has indeed been one of the important lenders of Armenia. We have been working with Armenia for the last 25 years, since 1992. And we have been providing financial arrangements to Armenia. We've had 9 arrangements with Armenia. And the IMF money are typically used to boost the reserves of the central bank, so that the central bank has enough foreign exchange to pay for the import, to pay for the external liabilities, and to ensure that the foreign exchange market functions properly. So what can we say about how exactly the IMF money were used? So let's take at least, for example, the last IMF program. The last IMF program was signed in 2014 and expired in 2017. And the last years were pretty stormy, right? Because Armenia was hit by an external shock. The crisis in Russia, when the Russian growth slowed down significantly to the negative territory, and the Russian ruble depreciated. So the IMF program was used to once again boost the reserves of the central bank, and the policies that were formulated under the program were used to support macroeconomic stability, to implement counter-cyclical fiscal policy to support the growth, to make sure that the financial sector is stable, and to ensure that the inflation is under control. So 3 years later, now 2017, we project the growth in 2017 might exceed 4%. The economy is growing, macroeconomic stability was preserved, the financial stability was enhanced. So, moreover, under the previous program, important reforms were implemented. For example, the tax code, the energy sector reform. So, all in all, we believe that our program was successful despite some challenges.
Successful, as you said, but look at numbers.
And I could say that Armenia is a small open economy which is very vulnerable and susceptible to external shock. And once again, think about it. In 2008, there was a global financial crisis which affected not only Armenia, but was also very painful to all countries on the world, including our key trading partners, Russia, China, and Eurozone. After that, another crisis hit Armenia. Yeah, so without the fiscal policy response that led to the accumulation of debt, the situation could have been much worse. So the whole idea behind the high government spending to support the economic activity was actually to maintain macroeconomic stability and to eliminate the threat of deeper crisis.
Our public debt is amounted to approximately $6.3 billion. There is a question of financial or maybe economic stability of Armenia. What do you think on this? Is it a threat to Armenian financial or maybe economic stability?
So we like to think about debt, to express the debt as a share of GDP, right? Because this is how we assess how large the debt compared to the size of the economy. And so currently the public debt exceeds 50% of GDP. And this is not a small number. This is an elevated number. But we regularly conduct the debt sustainability analysis of the countries, and we did a debt sustainability analysis for Armenia recently in June when we published our previous report. Our analysis shows that the debt remains sustainable, and our analysis takes into account different factors. It is the exchange rate, it is the growth, it is the interest rates, and our fiscal projections. And why I mentioned fiscal projections, because it is very important where we see the debt in the coming years. We take into account that fiscal consolidation scenario and fiscal consolidation plan that is currently discussed by the government. So according to our projections, debt will probably stabilize in the next years, and then the debt will be on the declining path.
There are many talks here in Armenia that country may face risk of default. What do you think on this? Is it a possible scenario for Armenia, or, I mean, for coming years?
So, of course, there are important risks for the current level of debt. For example, the exchange rate risk. The largest part of the debt is in the foreign exchange currency, which means when the national currency depreciates, the level of debt could increase significantly. But there are also important mitigating factors. For example, the average maturity of the debt is relatively long. This reduces the rollover risks. Also, most of the debt is on concessional terms, which is at a lower interest rates. So all in all, again, according to our debt sustainability analysis, we do not see the threat of the debt default. We see that currently the debt is sustainable, but it is particularly important to stick to the fiscal consolidation plan and to put the debt on the declining path in the medium term.
Armenian government, Armenian authorities plan to get approximately 5% average economic growth for coming years. Do you think is it possible for Armenian economy, taking into consideration current situation in our economy, current situation in our region?
Let me tell you how we assess Armenia's potential growth currently. So according to our assessment, it is in between 3 to 4%.
For this year or for
it's
next?
also called potential growth. So how high economic growth for Armenia could be in the medium term if nothing else happens. The difference of course, our assessment is lower than the authorities' assessment, but the authorities have planned. It's the government reform plan that underpins this 5% target of growth. So there are a number of measures that can actually deliver important growth dividend. The government plans to support the export sector to promote the export-driven growth. It also plans to implement a number of measures that could promote foreign direct investment and domestic investment. Taken all together, yes, all those measures can deliver higher growth, higher than what currently the IMF envisages.
Ms. Ustyugova, let's talk about the problem number one for Armenia, I mean declining number of Armenian population. What do you think, can it has some kind of negative influence on on our economy, on our financial stability, or on our economic growth for coming years? What do you think on this?
So shrinking population is a problem. Shrinking population lowers the labor force, those people who can participate in the labor process, and also it lowers the output that can be produced, unless, of course, this is compensated by high productivity. But there is also another problem. Yes, over the years we've seen immigration from Armenia, but at the same time the unemployment remains very high, 20%. So it's a puzzling situation. On the one hand, people immigrate from the country. On the other hand, the unemployment remains very high, and particularly high among the youth. And in 2017 was a good year for Armenia, right? The growth may exceed 4%, but this didn't solve the problem of unemployment. This means that we need focus on specific policy measures to address the problem. This problem will not solve by itself just through higher economic growth. Therefore, we would like to So the IMF advice is, let's focus on job creation. Let's focus on retraining those who need a job. Let's focus on assessing the job skills that are currently required by the market and those job skills that are currently available. Apparently there is a mismatch, and therefore the policy effort in this area is needed.
Is it mean that we have economic growth, but we haven't economic development? So also because of oligarchic system in our economy?
So our assessment is that the competition on the domestic market is indeed limited. Limited, right? And there is a lot of room for improvement. And we have been raising this question and discussing, having very candid discussion with the authorities. And according to our assessment, it does impede growth. And this problem needs to be tackled from two sides. From the one side, of course, the dominant powers should not be allowed to abuse those powers. And on the other side, it is important to promote business environment so that the new companies that enter the market grow, and this way limiting the dominant powers of the existing players.
On the other hand, our authorities, they are talking very much on free market, on, you know, anti-monopoly policy. So what was the answer of Armenian authorities, of Armenian government on this issue?
Well, the answer you can see in the government program. Yeah, this is the official document that documents the official view. And there we can see that the authorities plan to clarify the legal framework that looks at the abuse of the dominant powers. And at the same time, the government plans to implement measures to promote business environment, to create the level playing field, to clarify the rules of the games, and to support the interests of the private businesses that enter the market.
What do you think? Are documents working in reality?
Well, in the reality, these are the authorities who are working, and the documents only provide the roadmap. So the roadmap, it can be very clear, transparent, and precise, but the question is implementation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.